Chuck Holton coming to you from Odessa, Ukraine, a southern coastal city along the Black Sea. We just got here about a few hours ago. And as soon as it got dark, we started seeing this from the balcony of our hotel room. So if you don't know what that is, that's air defense trying to take down a drone attack. Russia has been sending hundreds of drones and missiles, 5, 6, 7, 800 a night into Ukraine about every fourth night. And by and large, they're all targeting civilian areas. They just randomly target buildings. It's easy to say that because if you look at the buildings that got hit, you're like, that's obviously an apartment building. That's not a military site at all. And so they're just trying to terrorize the Ukrainian people into submission. It's not working very well. We're going to talk about what Ukraine is doing to fight back. I will show you what we found because this is the first time I've seen this in Ukraine. Take a look at what we ran into.
This bomb shelter behind me is something that you're starting to see here in Ukraine that really wasn't a thing before. Obviously very common in Israel, where they've been dealing with incoming missiles for many years. But after 4 years of war and the Russians continuing to ramp up their attacks on civilian areas like this one, there's a playground just right over here in this park. Ukraine has started to put up these bomb shelters to give people a place to run to if a missile starts coming in.
Interesting to see those starting to go up around Ukraine. And Odessa is pretty close to the western border of Ukraine. So it's about as far as you can get from the fighting in the south. So I thought it's probably going to be quiet, people just going about their business. And that was true. We saw women out pushing their babies in baby strollers. We saw people going for runs, people taking their dogs for a walk, sitting around at cafes and having coffee. So it looked like just normal life. But as I showed you at the beginning, as soon as it got dark, we started hearing gunfire and explosions. We did hear a few explosions throughout the day. I don't know if that was controlled detonations or training or something, but I don't think it was active combat or anything. But this was not training for sure. They are shooting at a threat that they perceive to be coming in. And this is taken from the balcony of my hotel. Now, the Ukrainians are actually turning the tide of this war, I believe. And here's why. They've been focusing their efforts rather than terrorizing civilians. They've been firing missiles and drones into Russia every night and targeting their oil infrastructure. You've heard me talk quite a bit about that if you've heard any other lives that I've done on Ukraine. Ukraine has been working very hard to start developing their own missiles and drones and not having to buy them from somebody else or get them donated from another country. They have this new Flamingo missile, which they've used sparingly so far. I think they're saving up a bunch of those missiles for a very large attack at some point. But they also have a missile called the Neptune, which used to be an anti-ship missile that Ukraine reconfigured and turned into a land-based attack missile. The long version of the Neptune has 1,000-kilometer range. So what they have done over the weekend, just in the last couple of days, is strike at several very important oil depots where ships come in the Black Sea and dock and get filled up with Russian crude, and then they go and take that to China, maybe India, whatever. If you go over to the map, you see Feodosia, Novorossiysk, and Tuapse. These three places have been struck very hard. Now, Novorossiysk was the main artery for Russian crude in the Black Sea. They used to transit about 2 million barrels a day out of this port right here. There are now no ships in these docks. They're all gone. One of them was struck, it was like a 240-meter ship, so it was a good-sized ship, was struck by an unmanned surface vehicle from Ukraine that came into the harbor and hit it right amidships. They managed to completely shut the thing down. This is a big development, folks. And I think that a lot of people just don't appreciate just how important this strike was for several reasons. Now, as I said, it was Russia's number one port. They moved about 2.2 million barrels of crude a day through that port. and now they're moving zero. So if you take 2.2 million barrels a day off the market, that represents about 2% of all of the oil that gets produced in a day on planet Earth. That is massive. And it's about 20% of Russia's total energy output. And they just took that out on Friday night, and it's closed. So they got nothing going on over there. They called that place Fortress Russia because they said it was impregnable. They had their most advanced air defense missiles around the port. And not only did the Ukrainian drone and missile strike penetrate those air defenses, but it managed to destroy a good bit of those air defenses. Actually, it looks like about 20% of all of Russia's remaining S-400s were destroyed in that strike. That's massive. So that makes the attack on Novorossiysk right up there with the sinking of the Moskva or the Operation Spiderweb, where they moved drones into Russia and then launched them and went and blew up a bunch of irreplaceable Soviet-era long-range bombers. If Ukraine can continue to degrade Russia's ability to sell oil, they're starting to call these attacks Ukrainian sanctions, because President Trump has been threatening sanctions for a long time, but just hasn't really got around to making them stick. And the European Union is the same way. Ukraine said, we will sanction them our way, and their way is demolish their ability to put out oil. As we watch this unfold, Russia's ability to prosecute this war continues to go down. They still have plenty of people, plenty of weapons, but they don't have plenty of money, and money is the hard issue for them. 40% of the Russian government's revenue comes from oil, and every $1 drop in the price of oil equates to about a 4% drop in revenue for the government of Russia, because Russia has to sell its oil at about $10 off the going price for a barrel of oil that everybody else pays. Because of the sanctions, there are a lot of countries that just won't buy Russian oil, so they sell it to China. The price of oil is about $65 a share. Russia sells its oil at $55 a share. If it goes down another $5 a share, Russia is not going to be able to take that oil out of the ground profitably. They'll be losing money hand over fist. However, the strike that the Ukrainians just did on these three fuel depots actually made the price of oil go up because it reduced the global supply by 2%. And now China and India are going to have to look for oil somewhere else. Russia is trying to build pipelines as fast as it can across to China, but it definitely hurt them, and it hit them in the pocketbook where it hurts the most. So let's look at these two strategies and compare them. Russia is firing 800 missiles at a time about every 4 days. They're hitting almost exclusively civilian targets. They're terrorizing the people. They're making the people very tired of war, tired of having to sleep in the subway station or in a bunker. And a lot of people are resigned to the fact that if it's my day, it's my day. I don't even go to the bunker anymore. And that's what we're doing here. So the amount of money that's being taken out of Russia's pocket, what is this? This is sickening. 100 billion Ukraine can go to HE double hockey sticks. Why should we give Ukraine another penny? I just joined. Have you talked about this? Who's auditing the money sent to Ukraine? Okay, we've given about $120 billion worth of value to Ukraine since the war started. Some of that money, actually a lot of that money, has not been dispersed yet. It doesn't get released until future years. So you're talking 2032 or 2036. A lot of that money is still in the bank in the United States. The money that we are spending to send military hardware to Ukraine is military hardware that's made in the United States. So it is a job creation scheme. I won't even call it a policy or a program. It's a scheme to create jobs, reinvesting taxpayer money into the U.S. economy by buying weapons. And the more weapons get bought, the more jobs that we create in the United States. They then send the completed products over to Ukraine to use in their war. Let's move on with the actual topic here. These refineries getting hit, this one strike costs Russia $120 million a day in petroleum products. Not all of that is Russian oil. Some of it belongs to Kazakhstan and other countries. Russia doesn't get the full amount when they sell those barrels of oil. There's a drone over there they're trying to hit, but bad day for Russia on Friday. Ukrainians have been trying to hit Russia where it hurts, and it's working. They are already seeing major logistical problems that the Russians are having to get their troops supplied. There was a video I saw that came out today of one of the Russian troops saying that he and his unit in Pokrovsk are eating tree bark because they haven't been resupplied. They don't have any food. They are losing about 700 men a day, Russia is. And that's been corroborated by multiple sources. You'll hear some things that say, oh, Russia is advancing and they've taken the town of Pokrovsk. Well, it turns out that was a little premature. They haven't taken the town of Pokrovsk, and Ukraine mounted a counterattack and pushed the Russians out of much of Pokrovsk after they had reported to Vladimir Putin that the city was secured. Now generals are afraid to go back to Putin and ask for more air power or ask for more artillery to liberate an area that they told Putin was already liberated. So the troops on the ground are struggling, being hunted down by Ukrainian drone operators. So we're starting to hear the rhetoric inside Russia ramp up to the point where a very popular Russian talk show with some commentators that would be like The View or something like that in the United States, only not with a bunch of angry women. I didn't get a chance to translate this into English or dub it into English so you can listen to it in English, but it is subtitled here. So I want you to listen to this conversation.
Это разрушено, плотина Киевская должна быть разрушена, город должен быть затоплен, Харьков должен быть уничтожен, Николаев, Одесса, Сумы стерты с лица земли, как Днепропетровск и прочие города. При этом вначале предупреждаем, не понимают, осуществляем. Но другого нельзя, к сожалению. Это же не хорошо, не плохо, это просто данность.
Ну, как можно по-другому воевать? Ну, только таким образом, только таким образом.
These guys are talking about, we just need to completely wipe out Kyiv, and they went on to list all the major cities in Ukraine. The problem is they can't even wipe out Pokrovsk, which is a town that is a tiny little town, like 20,000 people. It's completely destroyed at this point. There's really not much but rubble left in Pokrovsk. And they've been fighting almost all year to take Pokrovsk. They've lost maybe 100,000 casualties trying to take that small city that you've never heard of until we started hearing it in this war. The Russians have moved up. They have taken some more land. But if you average out the number of casualties that they take per kilometer that they're taking over, they are going to lose pretty much the entire population of Russia before they take over Ukraine. Now they're saying that they're going to mass their forces and move on Zaporizhia. And Zaporizhia is still a good 14 miles from the front lines. At the rate that they are taking ground in that region towards Zaporizhia, it would take them 6 months at their current rate to take over, or just to get to the outskirts. And they would lose tens, if not hundreds of thousands of troops doing it. This is why they're recruiting Ukrainians in occupied areas to send them into fight. This is why they're buying North Korean soldiers as fast as they can and sending them into fight. They're tricking people from India and the Philippines to come into Russia on a work visa and then putting a gun in their hand and sending them out to the front lines. So things are not going well for Russia, and they're hard for Ukraine as well. Ukraine is struggling to keep the lights on all the time. There's a lot of rolling blackouts and things like that. So here in Odessa, they're doing pretty well with electricity, but other places across Ukraine are struggling quite a bit more. People have pretty much adapted to it by purchasing generators or solar panels. These people are fighting for their very survival, and they will beg who they have to beg. They will fight if they have to fight. They're working very hard to become more and more independent so they can make their own weapons here and drones and to get them out to the front lines as fast as possible. And if they do that, then they don't have to ask President Trump for permission to strike beyond 600 kilometers. If they want to hit the Kremlin, they can go right ahead and do it. Now, it's likely that the next thing that they're going to start targeting is on the map here. You see Russia has a border along the Baltic right here. This little area right here is the only area they have on the Baltic Sea other than the exclave that they have down here called Kaliningrad. And Kaliningrad is no help to them in terms of getting oil out, but they do have two oil facilities here, one at Ust-Luga and one at Primorsk. These two facilities have not been struck yet. And if they manage to strike those two, Ukraine will pretty much destroy Russia's ability to fund the war completely. This is where the majority of Russia's money comes from. Now, if you think about it, you go, well, if Ukraine wanted to shoot at them, they'd have to shoot missiles over Belarus, over Latvia, over Estonia, or something like that. But no, they could fire missiles into Russia and come around this way and strike them from the land side. So we'll just have to see if that actually happens. And if those Ukrainian sanctions are levied on the Russian oil machine. Okay, so now I want to share this tab. This is deep state map. And here's Zaporizhia that I was talking about. So from Zaporizhia to this salient right here is about 14 miles. The gains that they're making over time are actually very, very small units, maybe 15 guys that get, they point a gun at them and they say, you're going to infiltrate behind enemy lines and plant a flag somewhere so we can say we took over more ground. That's a death sentence. So they have a lot of Russian soldiers who are reportedly refusing to do these missions. They're saying, put me in prison. I don't care, because it's better to be in prison than to be dead. This town of Orikhiv, I spent the night in Orikhiv back in November of 2022. And at that time, it was only 2 miles from the front lines. Now it's about 5 miles from the front lines. So there's been virtually no progress in that salient. So again, it's going to take them a long time to take over Ukraine at the rate they're going.